Hey everyone, thanks very much for coming. I'm George Gray, VP of Customer Success at Partnerize, and today I'm lucky enough to be joined by Nick Caulfield, Senior Director for Growth and Operations for the Strategic Partnership and Affiliate Business at Expedia. For those of you who don't know Nick's had an impressive 16-year career in the partnership industry and has made his mark both on the technology and the brand fronts. His leadership extends to managing commercial, strategy and operational teams, both in the UK and the US, having recently returned to London after 5 years in Seattle. Personally, I've had the really good fortune of spending the last 3.5 years working with the team at Expedia Group and have been able to be involved in supporting them grow their well-established global partnership program even further still. I can also say firsthand that Expedia's approach to partnerships is definitely very special. And together, Partnerize and Expedia have been working together for over 9 years. And so seeing that evolution has been really impressive. And today with Nick, I'm excited to be able to share a glimpse into the inner workings of the partnerships and affiliate business and their growth strategy in the coming years. And as you'll see over the next 30 minutes or so, it's definitely a far from typical approach. So Nick, first of all, welcome back. First PI Live in a few years. Can you kick us off by telling us a little bit more about yourself and also what partnerships means for Expedia Group?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Nick Caulfield, as George said. I'm Senior Director at Expedia and I oversee the growth and operations team. And that's within our Strategic Partnerships and Affiliates business, or SPAR as we affectionately call it. We have an interesting role to play within Expedia in that the SPAR business, like our purpose is to profitably extend our brand's reach, and we do that by engaging with partners and with travelers where they choose to book travel, and that means that we can go to market with our travel products, and we can take those to our partners and we can take them to our travelers, but we do that all within like the rails of affiliate marketing and on the affiliate model. My team itself, they support it through growth and operations. So we're a multifaceted operations team. We capture value and we also create value. So we create value through partner satisfaction and customer satisfaction. But then we also take that value and we turn that into profits. So my team is then responsible for growth initiatives or sales enablement, commercial excellence, vendor optimization, all of these sort of things that then turn that value into profits for the business as well. So it's quite a diverse team that I work for. It's a really cool team. Before that, I was then heading up a small strategy team within SPAR as well. And then prior to that, I was then doing commercial roles within Expedia. So kind of been playing my own little mini game of risk. But I started off managing EMEA, then I moved over to North America. I then took on LATAM, and then Australia and New Zealand as well. So apart from APAC, I haven't quite conquered that region yet, but I've managed to oversee some of that in some of the global roles that I've had as well. What partnerships means at Expedia? Well, partnerships are integral to Expedia. We're a multi-sided marketplace, as many of you probably know. What you might not know is that we have our supply partnerships, so where we have our inventory and we provide relevant inventory to our customers. And then we have our demand partnerships where we're driving demand to our brands. But then the other side of our marketplace is then we have our B2B side, which is then the externalization of our technology. So how do we then go to businesses that want to work in travel and help them power their own businesses? So we're quite unique in that respect. We're also unique from a SPAR perspective because we actually work so we're a B2C channel, right? We drive demand through to Expedia and their brands, but we actually sit in the B2B side of Expedia's house, which causes a lot of complexities, but also gives us a lot of advantages as well. So we can approach the channel slightly more uniquely, I think, than maybe other advertisers can. And we have a little bit more freedom because we're not confined just by B2C metrics. We're able to also to look at the success of our B2B metrics too. So if you're just on the B2C side, you might be primarily looking at transaction volume, new customers, app downloads, all of these sort of things that are important to your brands. We look at that obviously, but we also look at primary metrics that are more relatable to B2B marketing. So we look at funnel progression, for example, like how many partners are we bringing on? How many partners are then activating? What's our churn rate? What's our lifetime value of our partners? what's our partner acquisition cost or customer acquisition cost. And that means that we can approach the channel slightly differently. We're not confined by the restrictions of ROAS. Like we're not always having to deliver on ROAS. We can actually choose to deliver still profitable partnerships, but we can choose to run like hotter and colder on certain partnerships. And I think that allows us to be more creative. And you might have seen in some of the press just more recently one of the more creative partnerships that we've been able to do, which is with the Atlanta Hawks, which is an NBA team, and State Farm, which is their venue. But we power the travel for their customers, and that's something that we can approach commercially very creatively, and from a technical perspective very innovatively as well, which we probably wouldn't be able to do if we were just siloed on the B2C side.
Thanks very much. I'd like to think maybe there's an opportunity to rebrand the whole industry to be called Spa as well, not just Expedia's team, but maybe we've got a bit of a way to go. Okay, let's dive a little bit deeper into that strategy around delivering sustainable global growth for your spa business. How are you going about developing this, and what are some of the steps you're taking to get yourself into the position you're in today?
I think one of the first steps is actually really off-putting just seeing myself come up here. Yeah, I didn't think my nose could get any bigger, but it can. So there we go. But yeah, I think the first step that we took was a step backwards, and that was really important for us. We did some analysis and some research really to understand how we would go to market. So we did this two like really critical pieces that we did, and maybe a third as well that we could talk about later. But we did market analysis, which was really to go into greater detail the markets that we operate in and understand what the competitive forces were within those markets. Competitive forces being like, what are our rivals doing? What are substitute products doing? What's the supply like? And basically trying to understand what's the profitability within those markets based on those competitive forces. And that really enables you then to answer, firstly, should I be in that market? And then secondly, if I am going to be in that market, how do I differentiate myself from competitors or from rival or substitute products? So that was kind of the first thing that we did. And then the second thing, and we're fortunate to be able to have the resources to be able to do this and the budget, but we actually did market research as well. So we had an independent team that went and did interviews with our partners, but then also did interviews with the travelers that interact with our partners' products. And we did hundreds of these interviews, and that was an incredibly humbling experience. I think we thought we were a lot better than we were, and actually the feedback was chuffing awful. Like to be honest, it was brutally honest, and it meant that we had to go back and really assess like how we run our business. And I guess the insight that we really got was that the foundations that we ran our business on weren't fit for purpose. And if we truly wanted to scale, then we'd have to make sizable changes to the way that our foundations ran. And yeah, that was really humbling. I think it's like being a director of a film, and you think you've done a masterpiece, and then you check on IMDb and you only have like 6.9 or something like that. That like the perception that we had versus the reality was actually pretty far apart. I should say that 6.9 is a score of a masterpiece, which is The Devil Wears Prada, but I don't know how that's only got 6.9. But yeah, so the third thing that I would recommend, and probably is more accessible to any advertiser or any business, is just building feedback loops. And that's something that we did. The way that we did that was we did our own NPS survey, and we started to go out to our partners on a regular basis, once a quarter, and we would solicit feedback from our partners. And again, we got some pretty honest truths through that as well. But it means that we set this barometer within our business, and it's something that we track to understand, what is our perception versus the reality. But also, are we delivering a good service, and what's the partner experience that our partners were having with our product as well. And that's something that I think anyone can go off and do. You can make NPS surveys really, really complex, which typically Expedia we did, but you could also just make it very simple. But as long as you're asking the right questions and you're able to get that feedback, then it's stuff that you can use to then inform like your development roadmap, your product roadmap, inform like the service within your commercial teams. But yeah, it's really interesting things that you can go and do and you can do quite easily. The insights that we were able to take away, as I say, was they were pretty humbling, and it meant that we really had to go back and focus on the foundations of ours. So we actually spent like the last 12 or 18 months pretty much tearing up our business and rebuilding it, because the question that we wanted to ask was, if we were to really truly scale our business, and that's not to say like our business isn't at scale today, like we operate in 40 markets and with thousands of partners, but if we wanted to really undergo a true step change, could our foundations handle it? And the honest answer was no. Like if we wanted to go after tens of thousands of partners or hundreds of thousands of partners, then our foundations would creak and ultimately break. So that's really what the journey that we've gone on over the last 12 months. And that's a difficult message to deliver internally, right? Especially coming out of the back of the pandemic. Your leaders want you to grow quickly and you want to get back to like where you were pre-pandemic if you're not already at those levels. But the message that we had to give was the opposite, was that actually, we're gonna try and deliver growth, but ultimately the growth will come later on, because we have to go back and reinvest in the way that we do business. Unfortunately, we have a travel leadership team all the way up to the CEO that is invested in our business and believes in the growth opportunity within affiliates and strategic partnerships. Reverse that, strategic partnerships and affiliates. And yeah, we're fortunate that they were then able to invest in that, and they gave us sizable product and technology resources to be able to go back and rebuild these foundations. So, we're maybe an anomaly in that respect, but also I think advertisers can think, am I fit for purpose? Can I achieve my global maximum today with the capabilities and the foundations that I have in place? And I imagine that if you really looked at that with honest eyes, that you could probably say that most people don't have that capability today.
Brilliant. I think it's so refreshing to hear a brand of Expedia Group size actually wanting to go out and get that feedback and do that research before ploughing ahead with their own view as to how they should grow the program. I agree. I think any advertiser in the room today could be doing that to some level. So yeah, it'd be great to hear more advertisers trying to solicit that feedback. And yeah, you're in pretty good company with Devil Wears Prada, so don't take it too personally. Okay, obviously you mentioned you're working in 40 markets. All of these processes and this strategy, how are you embedding this on a global scale, and as you try to navigate the nuances of the different markets that you work in?
Yeah, I think the nuances I think is a really important question, or just going back and saying, what markets you want to be in is a really important question. It's often one that gets overlooked. You really should be crystal clear in terms of like where you're going to play. That can be what markets, audiences, segments, verticals, whatever it is, but you're crystal clear in terms of like where you want to play, but then equally where you don't want to play. You need to be making sure that your strategy, you have good strategic fit, you have good product fit, and you build the guardrails to ensure that you're focusing on that strategy and not distracted by other things. There's a great book that's called Playing to Win, which is written by the CEO of Procter & Gamble, or ex-CEO. But he talks about this idea of a cascading strategy. And you start with like your winning aspiration, then you go to like, where do you play? How do you win? And then you go through to what capabilities do you then need to be able to achieve all of those things. But the second most important thing is, where do you play? And that's really, really critical. Expedia has been very guilty of doing the exact opposite of that. And I'd say up until sort of the last 12 months or 18 months, we've been really guilty of flip-flopping a lot in terms of our strategy, even sometimes on a weekly basis. George and Partnerize could probably attest to that. CJ, who we work with as well, could probably attest to that, in that, we were quite confusing to work with, I think, and we were, all we were doing by doing that was just accruing tech debt, and we were providing a suboptimal partner experience. And ultimately, that's the feedback that we got when we went and did our market research, is that the partner experience working with us was suboptimal. It wasn't good at all. Now we're way more deliberate in terms of how we invest our resources and where we invest our resources. And I'd say we've been the last 18 months very clear on what our strategy has been, and it hasn't really deviated at all. So hopefully you can attest to that as well. But yeah, I think as you build out your strategy, you obviously still have to take notice and think about what the overarching brand strategy is, and you have an obligation to obviously match that strategy as well, especially in our terms where we're thinking of geo strategy. But we also have an obligation to invest the right resources in the right places, and those right places are where we will get profitable growth and where we would see price elasticity. There's no point overstretching your team in markets where you don't necessarily see that there's an opportunity or real headroom for growth. All you're doing is just limiting what this channel can deliver for the brands. So yeah, I think that's super important in terms of understanding that. And really, the only way that you're going to get to that is by having good data. We're just at the end of our journey of cleaning up a lot of our data, and I know this says a lot, like data is crucial, blah blah blah. It is, but I imagine there's a number of advertisers in this room that will be in the same situation that we were up until recently, which is your data is hugely fragmented. In fact, I've spoke to people just in the past day here, and even they talk about just how difficult it is to get access to their data and make their data actionable. And what we've done is we've gone through this big journey as part of our reinvestment in our foundations, but we've tried to bring in all of our data into what we call an affiliate data pipeline, but a single source of truth. So we don't have data on our networks, data in some of our direct partners, data in-house, which is coming through data, different data sources or different data platforms. We've brought all of that together so we have one single source of truth, and it means that we can do the data is just way more accessible, and we can act upon it a lot quicker. We can make better decisions, and we can make more informed decisions. One of the main reasons that we were flip-flopping in our strategy is because largely we were just acting on either incomplete or inaccurate data, and that meant that we didn't have cohesion in our strategy. And now we have that. We had an example just recently that we want to do some price elasticity analysis, and we were able to actually get that in 2 hours. So pull all the data and didn't do the analysis in 2 hours, but we pulled all of the data and we were able to have that at our fingertips, and that then enables us to be able to think differently about our commercial strategy. So data is super important, and I'd say if you don't have confidence in your data, it's an area that you should definitely invest in. And what that then enables you to do, if you're thinking about expanding into markets or assessing in the markets that you're in, if you're already global, is you can then start to think about what's the size of the opportunity and assess whether you really should be in those markets. You can think about your total addressable market, take that down to your serviceable, attainable market. You can then get a good understanding of whether the opportunity actually even exists for you in those markets. We found that when we did that analysis, the opportunity within partnerships doesn't necessarily marry up with the opportunity that exists within the brands. So rather than following our brand strategy 100%, we went to the brands and had a challenging conversation to say, well, yeah, we can follow your strategy and we can deliver, X amount in growth and Y in EBITDA, or we can go and invest our resources and in the places where the opportunities actually exist and where we see that there's headroom for growth and we can really make a difference. And we can deliver way more growth and we can deliver way more EBITDA. And it just means that by having those conversations and that compelling narrative, you're able to really influence people to be able to do that. But, without the data, you don't, and without good governance, it's really difficult for you to build that go-to-market strategy. The analogy is, it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. You're just you're just not prepared. You're really ill-equipped to be able to deliver on that strategy. And that's, a good example is Chelsea Football Club, for example, just not being able to do that. I had to get that
in. Well, I'll move on from that. You briefly touched on governance, and I know firsthand, especially over the last 18 months, how important good governance has been to the recent successes at Expedia. But, absolutely, as the operation gets larger, the more of a challenge that becomes to stay on top of that good governance. What advice can you share to the audience to make sure that they're actually staying on top of this as programs scale globally?
Yeah, we've definitely not been good at governance up until recently, and we've invested in that a lot more. But I'd say like climbing on my soapbox a little bit in that, I still hear like conversations, even like in the preamble to this conference and even in the conference, where people are still aggrieved that we don't have the same seat at the table as other marketing channels and all of this. I think you came up in the zilch conversation earlier as well. But I actually think like governance is one of the things that we really overlook that could actually help us elevate this channel, because you can talk outside of just transaction volume and capital allocation and who's getting the budget and who's not getting the budget. There was an example in the zilch conversation about the customer acquisition cost within I think it was in social or display or whatever. But it was an extraordinary amount, and it takes up a huge amount of like the gross margin that they would have within that business. And if you actually then put that and showcase like what you could do within partnerships and the efficiencies that you get within that, the conversation changed. But you only really get that if you have access to good data and you have good governance. When I was at Awin and when I first started at Expedia as well, there's billions of dollars going through these platforms, but very, very little governance in terms of actually overseeing like how that money is flowing through from the brands all the way through to the partners, and even in some cases to the customers if it's cashback or loyalty platforms. I think there was maybe a handful of advertisers either in finance or telecoms because they had to deliver governance, but outside of that there wasn't really any. So yeah, I do think that is crucial to us as an industry being taken more seriously. Governance is really, really important to that. I'd say one thing that we implemented that I think anyone can do as well is really understand like what your value chain is within your business. So what are your strategically relevant activities that you have that create your product or service? If you understand what that is, like the various links that you have within that, you can then overlay a growth formula over that. And then you can then start to understand like what your primary metrics are as a business. And you'll find that is beyond, how many transactions am I delivering and what's my gross booking value? And this maybe is because we have a more bias towards B2B now and being in the B2B side of Expedia's house, but we can really understand the proper metrics that we can govern that would actually help us to optimize our business. We have an analogy which is like the leaky bucket, and a lot of water comes into our bucket, and we've found that there's lots of little holes where the water is escaping, and then we come across these huge gaping holes where the water is just gushing out. And actually where we just get to the bottom, there's just a very, very small amount of water that we're able to work with. Put that into a partner analogy, essentially what we were getting is we're getting a lot of people or partners that are interested in our business, but the funnel and the progression through our funnel there was so much friction and so much drop off that ultimately we were just working with a handful of partners. So we went back and we looked at how do we optimize some of these things. A simple example, this is really embarrassing even to admit this, but in one of our platforms, we didn't even send out a welcome email. We sent a rejection email to our partners. So we were telling you, congratulations, you can't get on our program, but we weren't doing anything to those that could get on our program. And we've done some testing with that in terms of the various, content that we give. And we've started to do some welcome series, but we've seen an uptake in people going from from sign up through to activation. So an uptake, but also the speed of activation has increased dramatically as well. So we're actually driving more activations, and that enables you to look at the business differently. I think to just pulling marketing levers and just doing tactical campaigns with your partners. Outside of that, you can then actually think about, well, is my business healthy, and am I actually able to optimize some of those insights in order for us to be able to change the way that we do business as well. And Partnerize has been a great partner of that as well, because we've asked them to lead into those metrics, and we've had really good conversations with your data team who have then been able to replicate similar scorecards. So we're actually now asking Partnerize to measure their success based on the same way that we do, and that's a sign of a really good partnership. And we don't always get things right, but because Partnerize is meeting us halfway and shouldering some of that risk, we're we have a much more strategic relationship and are able to grow effectively together rather than in silo.
Yeah, it's definitely been a hell of 18 months to get to where we are now, and lots still to achieve. Probably a big shout out to Zoe for dragging us along on this process too. So we touched on Partnerize there, and want to understand a bit more around what technology means to Expedia and the technology partners that you work with. What role has technology partners played in helping you scale globally?
Yeah, technology's been crucial. I mean, as I talked about, like we've essentially just redone like the whole of our foundation. So a lot of that is based on product and technology. I think what's maybe unique about our business is that we're bucking the trend of like trying to consolidate all of our networks. We're actually looking at more of a multi-network approach. So going back in time to like 2005 or whatever. But we see that there's value in that, and we've done again a lot of work to standardize our integration, so it's actually easier for any network to just plug into our ecosystem and start to work with us. The advantages of that is that we can then have a global go-to-market, so we can use someone like Partnerize to be able to enter into markets at pace and be able to grow that business really quickly. But we can also use local networks in order to be able to get local penetration, utilize their local reach and their local trust as well. So CJ is a good example, which we use in North America. We use them in EMEA as well. But we use, in APAC, we use local networks like Link Price in Korea or Value Commerce in Japan. And that enables us to be able to be more deliberate again in terms of like what's our route to market. Do we want to use a local network? Do we want to use a hybrid of a local network and a SaaS? Do we want to invest our resources, or do we want to lean on the resources of a network to be able to do that? But it gives us a lot of flexibility to be able to adopt a go-to-market at a global level and a local level. And I think that comes back down to like when you think about your cascading strategy, what's your capabilities that you need in order to be able to deliver on how are you going to win and where you're going to play? And that's really like where we've been deliberate in thinking more about multiple networks rather than consolidations of networks. And of course, like we've tried to remain innovative in the way that we use technology, remain competitive within the industry as well. We've released more recently this creator toolkit, and if you haven't seen that, go and find it. It's a really cool innovation that we've brought to market, and it's a good example of how we're thinking about going to market with creators and influencers, and it's product-led and marketing-led rather than it being service-led. So it's a really interesting way that we're thinking about that. But also we've done a ton of automation and optimization within our business to understand like how can we pay partners faster? How can we pay them more accurately and more timely? So we've done a lot of work in terms of that, and also around vetting and fraud detection, anomaly detection, all of these things that we've invested in with technology. And then when we think about our overall ecosystem, we also think about that rent, build, buy conversation, and do we want to bring other technology partners into our ecosystem to enhance what we do? Button's a really good example with that, where they're integrated into our ecosystem, where they are providing value to us through app tracking and app conversion optimization. Marketo is a good example where we're using that for outbound marketing, or even Salesforce, where we're using that as our CRM, but that Salesforce is then plugged into our wider ecosystem. So it's plugged into Partnerize, it's plugged into CJ. But yeah, we're making deliberate choices in terms of the capabilities that we have to enhance the ecosystem that we have. And that's really what I love about working in Expedia, right? You have this really interesting intersection where you work on a really emotive product that is travel, but then you also work with really smart people that are very technology minded. I think people actually associate Expedia with being more of a technology company nowadays than they do being just a straight sort of OTA or travel provider.
Great, thank you. I know we're pretty much at time, so one final question. Maybe we'll have time for questions from the audience, not sure, but one biggest challenge that you've either faced as your team or as an individual as you've tried to go through this process and over the last 18 months scaled the business, what's been that big challenge?
Yeah, for me personally, I mean, those that work with me when I'm sort of part magpie, I like all the shiny things, so I will go after a lot of the new things, and and being told actually that you need to take a step backwards and you need to do ultimately like not really the sexy things, so the foundational side of things, but actually going through that transformation has been really, really interesting, and it's really setting us up for us to be able to have that big step change that we think exists within partnerships. I think as a team, we draw a lot of inspiration from other affiliate programs. We did a lot of teardowns when we were going through the analysis. We looked at Amazon and Etsy, Ticketmaster, Apple, Uber, all of the Hut Group, another really good example. But like all of these ones where we take inspiration of them, and we aspire to be a part of that group. But I think we also believe that there's an opportunity for us to go into like new oceans and new white spaces that maybe we haven't really thought about within partnerships. I think the State Farm and Atlanta Hawk partnership is a good example of that. I think that's the challenge that we've had with the team, is that we're going through a transformation exercise. We're asking our teams to do things differently, and that's a big challenge for us. There's again a lot of talk within the industry about how AI can help teams be more proactive than reactive, and of course AI can do those things. But I'd say we've probably got to the same thing, and we're promising the same thing to our teams by actually going back and really assessing, like, is our business fit for purpose? And I think if other advertisers and other businesses were looking at the same things, is my data good? What is my value chain? What's my growth formula? What's my go-to-market strategy? I think people would get to the same conclusions, that there's huge inefficiencies in the business, but also there's massive opportunities that exist that you probably didn't even realize were there.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, I hope any advertisers in the room today have taken a lot from Nick. I know it's refreshing to hear such a exciting and forward-thinking brand like Expedia talk about the way in which you're approaching this area of your business. So I'm sure others in the room have learned a lot. So thanks very much.
I was going to try and squeeze one question in.
Sure.
Squeeze away. The irony is we've had more questions from this session than any other, and we haven't got the time to go over it. So I'm going to squeeze one in anyway. Probably I think a good question. Can you provide an example of how governance can help elevate the partnerships channel and help shift budget into it? It's the one at the bottom. Oh.
Sorry, what was it?
I'm
amazed that I can actually read a screen. I'm not able to read screens normally.
Can you provide an example of how governance can help elevate the partnerships channel and help shift budget into it?
Yeah, sure. I should have thought about this when I said it. But yeah, I think for me, like one of the examples, like we talked about with the Zilch side of things, which is how effective are we at acquiring customers? I think the thing that we've also looked at in terms of governance is the amount of new business or new partnerships that we can bring in, and the incremental value that those new partnerships bring in. We work very differently to other marketing channels, but once you start to talk the same language, you can then make parallels when we do those sort of things, and it can lead to interesting conversations in terms of investment or capital allocation. When we start to do those things, we can then be again more creative with some of the partnerships that we have, because you're then given the green light to be able to do partnerships that run almost a net profitability. And I think that those conversations in terms of governance helps with that. I think if anyone wants to learn a little bit more about it, I can talk in a little bit more detail, I think, about the actual governance and the metrics that we look at. But we have a balanced scorecard that we look at. That balanced scorecard gets presented up to our senior leadership team. And the scorecard is the same across all of the marketing channels. So we're being measured not just on the transaction volume, but on other metrics that are the same to other businesses as well. And I think that's where you can really draw the parallels. If that doesn't exist in your business, then force it to. I think it's a really good thing to do. It, like I say, it helps people to, it helps to raise awareness just of our channel within those conversations, but it also, you get taken more seriously, I think, like just as a business as well. But yeah, if you do have questions, I can stick around and come and ask me them as well.
Great stuff. I'm sure that'll be very much appreciated. So thank you very much again for the session. Really informative, really helpful, insightful. Loved it. and I'm sure the audience did as well. So please give a massive round of applause.